Today's episode has been brought to you by Schedulicity.
Welcome to episode 71 of the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast. Today we meet Ariana Robinovich, yoga teacher, podcaster, and research enthusiast from New York City. Ariana talks about how yoga teachers can use research to inform their yoga practice as well as their yoga offerings. My name is Shannon Crow. I'm a mother of three, a yoga teacher, and a consultant for yoga teachers who want to share their unique yoga while creating a sustainable and profitable business. The Connected Yoga Teacher podcast was created for you, the yoga teacher entrepreneur. Every week between the classes, workshops, and trainings that you are teaching or attending, you can connect to information, ideas, and a supportive community of other yoga teachers. All of the show notes and links for today's episode can be found at theconnectedyogateacher.com/71. And just so you guys know, there is a special offer in the show notes thanks to Ariana. Before we meet Ariana, let's hear from Travis of Schedulicity.
Hey Connected Yoga Teachers, this is Travis with the Schedulicity Hot Tip of the Week. Just like you can use your research to inform your yoga, you can use your Schedulicity account to inform your class offerings and marketing. When you look through your class rosters and calendar, you can easily visualize your most popular classes and class times. You can also use advanced marketing metrics to see how your emails perform. If you notice a certain custom email inspired a lot of people to open it, then you can be sure that you have found a topic worth exploring more with your clients. This way, your practice and your relationship with your students can evolve in truly meaningful ways.
Thank you, Travis, and thanks to the entire team at Schedulicity. This hot tip actually inspired me to go and check out the email templates that you have, and wow, did I miss something? There are a lot more than I remember the last time I checked. There are many email templates to choose from, and I'm excited because I'm going to give it a try. I often use MailChimp, but I like how I can use the ones at Schedulicity and get some metrics from there, so that's exciting to know. Connected Yoga Teachers, how are you doing? I'm excited about today's interview with Ariana. She's a yoga teacher and movement specialist. Her passion is to help people to improve their movement skills and ultimately their quality of life. Ariana has a podcast called Yoga Research and Beyond. That's where I first heard of her. And this is where she really digs in and makes research accessible to yoga teachers. She has a gift for translating the data in a research study into what that means in a yoga practice or in a yoga class. You're going to hear Ariana share a new direction her podcast is moving into. I am super excited for this. In the meantime, she's taking some time to put this newer version of the podcast together. There's a large library of episodes there to go through, and she also has a membership site for yoga teachers, which works in a similar way, but it's online and you can read that. Ariana has actually offered a discount to that membership site for our Connected Yoga Teacher listeners. So have a listen for that. She tells us about that in the interview today. Also, if you just want to get right to that, there's a link in our show notes, theconnectedyogateacher.com/71. Ariana believes that movement is vital to our lives and that it's often missing in our more sedentary lifestyle. She helps yoga students to feel strong, confident, and to build that mind-body connection. On top of the membership site and podcast, Ariana teaches group classes, she works one-on-one with clients, she teaches courses to fitness professionals, and she has co-authored a book series titled Exposing Yoga Myths. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Ariana. It's great to have you here to talk with us today about research and how it applies to the yoga classes that we're teaching and to our yoga practice. Welcome to the Connected Yoga Teacher podcast, Ariana. It's great to have you here today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Tell our listeners, how did your yoga journey begin?
My yoga journey began when I was in high school, and it's kind of a series of events, I had a Raquel Welch book lying around the house that my mom had. And my mom went to Kripalu for a retreat, came back with an audio recording of Amrit Desai leading a yoga class. And I don't remember what made me decide to turn it on, but I was home alone and I put it on, and I just remember having a profound experience in my living room. And I was surprised by how connected I felt to myself and just grounded and centered, which was a refreshing feeling being a teenager. And we had just moved we were in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania at that time. And it was 11th grade, I think. And moving into a new school in 11th grade was very challenging. So to have that grounding experience was perfect and just what I needed. And that just lit something up. And ever since then, it's been a part of my life. And it's funny because it was hard at that time to find group yoga classes in Pittsburgh. And I remember I found, this was before the internet, I think. I had to look it up like in the phone book, or I don't know where I found it. But I ended up finding a man who taught group classes in his barn, like in a loft in his barn.
Wow.
And I had to drive, I don't know how far away it was, but it was quite remote from where I was living, and took some classes there. So that was interesting.
That's amazing. I love it that this journey kind of began on audio and you have a podcast. So you share on audio. That's really fun. Did your mom know that you were getting into yoga, and was she like secretly, yay?
Yeah, she knew for sure. And she was very supportive of it and excited that we could share that. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah. That's really nice.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, like, I just know in all of my, I heard about yoga a little bit as a teenager, but I certainly didn't go to a class as a teenager. And I think that would have such an impact. I'm thinking about, even this morning, my daughter said to me, can we get up at 5:30 together and do yoga? And I really hold back and say, like, I don't say, yeah. Like, okay. But if you're hard to wake up at 5:30, I'm not going to push this.
Out. Yeah.
And she was up and all ready. And this morning, I know she's 13. She's a pretty amazing kid. Her brothers were certainly never like that. And they still only come to me if they have like a sore leg or a sore back. But she said, okay, let's do this thing. And then this morning she said, I feel so energized yet calm. And I was thinking, yay.
That's amazing. That's beautiful. My daughter is not interested in yoga anymore, which I'm cool with. It's fine. We started, I started with her when she was pretty young, and I guess she got sick of it, or she is more interested in other things. For a while, she was more interested in gymnastics, and now it's volleyball. And I love being a volleyball mom. It's really cool.
Yeah. I think that's so great how you say, like, and now she's doing her own thing. Like, eventually she'll probably come back to yoga in some form or another in her own life. But I think kids need to stretch
she might.
out.
And it's something that's always there for her. And I'm fine if she doesn't, because she'll connect to something else that's meaningful to her. So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, that's pretty cool. So then what led you to then have your podcast and share with yoga teachers in the way that you do?
Yeah, so that's a jump, because I didn't start teaching till about 10 years ago. Yoga was a thread in my life, and I remember when I first thought, I'd love to teach this one day. It was a little kernel of an idea. And then I got certified to teach after my daughter was born. And I guess around 4 years into teaching, I don't remember exactly. I'm not gifted in keeping track of time. I started the podcast. It was kind of random and kind of planned in the sense that I wanted to share my interest. I had always been interested in the sciences and anatomy and out and beyond that, other movement disciplines and how they all interconnect and how they can shape each other and influence each other. That was always a big, that's just how I thought. And I wanted to share that and talk to interesting people in that light. And then the podcast happened. Originally, I was thinking it would just be a blog, but then the podcast happened kind of organically when I invited Katie Bowman to, I was going to ask her a bunch of questions, and we were toying with whether to do this in a written format or audio. And I was like, you know what, let me look into if I can make this an audio product. And I decided podcast and just took it from there. Somehow I was able to put it together on my own and create a podcast. And it's been really fun. I've talked to a lot of inspiring and intelligent teachers and educators in different disciplines. And so the podcast now, we're restructuring it because I have this other project on yoga research, and we're trying to bring the podcast and that yoga research project together. So now we're scheduling interviews with people who have been involved with research about yoga, either conducting it, writing about it, and writing about it in published journals. So I'm trying to bring the authors of that kind of material directly to teachers. So that's the next phase, and it's taking longer than I anticipated because I'm one person.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that. So that's new. That hasn't happened yet then.
Right.
Okay.
I've talked to other teachers who read research.
Yes.
And we've talked about the research, some of the research that we've covered on the research project site. But now I want to start asking questions to authors who are actually conducting the research and writing about it.
I think that's fascinating. It's interesting because just a couple of weeks ago, I was listening to your podcast and my partner and I were talking about it. And I said, now I have this question, but it's like you would need the person who wrote that paper to be able to ask that question. So
I want to know what your question was.
I can't remember. I know it was a podcast about hamstrings and what the best stretch was. I can't remember what my question was.
Okay. If it comes to you, let me know because I want to keep track of it and ask the person eventually.
Right. Oh, that's fantastic. So I really like that you're getting into that. And the other thing I really appreciate about your podcast is that you bring it to the level of someone who you don't have to be a scientist to get information from your podcast. I feel like you break it down and you discuss it, and then you sort of say, okay, how does this apply to a yoga class?
Yeah, that's something that is important to me, and it's hard to do. But I think that science can be scary especially for yoga teachers, and sometimes it gets a bad reputation. But I think it's just exciting and fun, and I think there always is a way to talk about those complex subjects in simple terms, and you don't have to use the jargon. You don't have to make it so convoluted so that only the scientists understand it. The way that science can become valuable to mainstream people is when it is kind of talked about in these simple terms, and that's when it is more accessible and inviting and fun, and it creates a bridge between science and application. So that's really important to me.
Yeah, I can tell. Well, thank you for doing that work. And like you said, it isn't easy, but I get the point where I go to read a study and I kind of glaze over and I think, what does this actually mean? And it's not even, I barely even give it the time to read it. Unless it's a topic that I'm feeling really interested in, I'll hit that paper and then think, oh, this is beyond This is beyond my scope of knowledge. So thank you for doing that work.
You're welcome. I'm glad that it's useful and interesting.
And so as part of this, you also run a membership site. Tell us a little bit about what that journey has been like.
Yeah, I started it a couple years ago, launched it last July, and it's Yoga Research and Beyond. And that's the URL, yogaresearchandbeyond.com. We are creating a database of reviews about individual studies. So it's the kind of study you just described, where you say, oh, this might be interesting. And then you start to read it and you start to glaze over and get lost in the jargon. So we pick studies like that are relevant to yoga teachers and movement educators. And we break it down into a structured format, almost like Cliff's Notes for yoga research. And that's basically the gist of what we're doing. And I think we have around 48 articles that we've reviewed, 48 studies that we've reviewed now, and we add 2 every month. And as we expand and grow, we're then going to take the studies we've reviewed and synthesize them by subject. So we can say, okay, here are the studies that we reviewed on handstand, and this is what we can glean from these 4 different papers, or osteoporosis, whatever the subject can be. That will be the next project within the membership site. And then also to create online educational courses about it so that teachers can dig deeper into it. And because people learn in different ways, some people get a lot from reading an article, and others would like to hear some sort of audio or video course to kind of flesh it out a little bit. So that's what we're going to be doing next.
That's amazing.
With the site.
Yeah. So yoga teachers can join the site and have access to that information, and they pay a membership fee.
Yes, it's a membership fee. And they can either do a monthly membership or pay for the year, and it gives them access to the entire database that we add to. Yeah.
Right. Is there anything that you've learned since starting that membership site that you wish that you would have known at the beginning?
For sure. I love how it's this double-edged sword. I love how it brings together people from all over the world who are interested in a particular topic. And at the same time, because we are so spread out, it's hard to feel like I don't feel like I've brought everybody together yet. And so I want to create more of a community feeling across all of the members. And right now I haven't figured out how to do that. So if I had known that in the beginning, that's a challenge, then I might have been able to prepare for that a little bit more.
Right.
So that's something I wish I knew.
How much is the membership site for a yoga teacher to sign up?
It's $99 for the year membership. If teachers want to test it out, they can do a month to month and then cancel any time, and that's $12.99 per month. And then we try to offer deals and promotions throughout the year to make it more affordable for teachers, because I know that as a teacher myself, I know that there are so many things we want to learn and put our money towards for continuing education, but funds are limited, so it can be challenging. But we try to make it as affordable as possible. I wish I could make it free.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you need to get paid.
But then I'd have to do advertising and then might not have the quality control that I want. So, and we do work really hard on it.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's pretty reasonable if you think about it. And you also had an offer for our Connected Yoga teacher listeners. Do you want to tell our listeners what that is?
Yeah, we'd love to offer any teachers who are listening to this and think that this is something that would be useful and meaningful for you. Then we'd love to give you a discount it would be $20 off of the year membership, and it would be $79 instead of $99.
That's amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, of course.
And so as part of that membership site, when you were saying that it was a little tricky around community, is there a forum in there, or is there a place to have discussion for group members? Yeah.
Yeah. And we have two ways that members can do that. They can either comment in like a comment thread on individual articles, or we have a private Facebook group page that's for members only, and people can post there. What I found is, and this is something I wish I knew ahead of time, I think a lot of teachers are intimidated about sharing their questions about this material because it is new and it is still scientific, and maybe teachers are a little bit timid in sharing their questions or ideas for how they are using this information. So that's been one of the things that we're working on to try to get more engagement in that way from teachers and members.
Right. And I feel that is happening overall, just in many different Facebook groups that I'm a part of, or forums, is that there is an element of fear of posting a question and it being like a silly question, or there is an element also there of people kind of jumping in and I don't want to say attack, because it's not always attack, but answering it in a way that could be taken the wrong way.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. People are afraid to look stupid. And I believe personally, no question is a dumb question. No. And that's the only way you will get anywhere with learning. And then I do see a lot of attacking happening, and especially in Facebook groups and in yoga groups. It's really disappointing.
Mm-hmm. It is. I clamped down on it pretty fast. Someone said to me, "Do you not believe in freedom of speech?" And I was like, "I totally do. And group safety trumps that 100%. So as long as you're being kind and respectful and helpful, your comment can stay."
Exactly.
And there are ways to say things. There are ways you could say, "I teach this way. I believe this. This is what I find in my practice," instead of, "This is the way it is."
Yes, exactly.
Can you share a few things that you have found really fascinating and that have impacted your own yoga teaching from this project of researching and learning?
Yeah. I think the one big overarching thing that I've come to realize is that even though, we think of science as being, and research in particular, as being, as providing concrete answers for questions that we have. And in fact, a lot of the times it leads to more questions. And so, I went into this thinking, okay, wouldn't it be great to break down research and to let teachers be more familiar with it so that they can have more concrete answers for how to work with their clients and students? And it's been the opposite. It doesn't provide black and white answers. It doesn't tell you what poses to use with someone who walks into your classroom who has low back pain. It doesn't tell you these poses will cure them. These poses will prevent the back pain from coming back. That's not what the research shows. It won't make the decision for you of whether or not you should do headstands or teach them to your students. It doesn't give you those black and white answers. And so along those lines, and then I'll get back to specific things that it does do. Along those lines, one of the things we were thinking of with this project was to have videos showing how we are using research in our teaching. And I didn't want, right now I'm tabling that because I decided I don't want to spoon feed teachers that information. The beauty of it is that you get to decide for yourself. And so you can take research and let it inform your teaching. So it's another tool in your toolbox to inspire you and to help you make creative choices in how you work with people. It doesn't replace anything. It's an add-on. Okay.
Right.
So that's a big thing. But I still think it's valuable because as of now, it's been an untapped resource. I don't even know if teachers know how much research is done about yoga, how long research has been going on, the quality of that research, or even what research is, for that matter.
Right.
Just to go over that for a second. I know I'm weaving around your question.
No, that's good. That's good.
So I've had people ask me, is it like you pick a topic and you're reading every book on that topic and then writing basically a paper on it? No, it's not like the research that we did in school or in college. This is scientific research that is often done in a laboratory or done within a specific amount of time, where you are looking at the effects of an intervention, in this case, yoga or another movement practice. You're looking at the effects, you're measuring them, and you're analyzing them. And you're coming to a conclusion about what that data means. And the big picture goal of yoga research is, at least where it is right now, is so many people are practicing yoga and a lot of people believe in the benefits, and there is a movement to integrate it into alternative healthcare, not necessarily to replace mainstream medical care, but to work alongside it and sometimes enhance it. And so because of those factors, it's our responsibility. If people believe in those health benefits, if people are using it to help people, we have to have a clearer understanding of what it's doing. And once we understand better what it's doing, then we can help even more people, because you can replicate those results and work with more people. So that's like the ultimate goal of research. That's hard. That's hard. And it's an ongoing process that will probably end. Yoga is referred to as a complex intervention, meaning it has multiple components. So that means, because it's a mind-body practice, let's say you are looking at the effects of Iyengar yoga on low back pain in a specified group of people. And then they have some improvements. Was it the breathing? Was it the meditative quality of the poses? Was it just the physicality of it, that you're moving and holding poses and stretching and maybe a little bit of isometric work as well? Is it the Iyengar? Is it that particular style? Or would you have the same results from, say, Bikram or some other style? So those factors are really hard to suss out in the research. And that's one of the goals moving forward in future research. But I went totally off with your question.
That's okay. You just actually triggered this thing that happened this week, this memory of mine. I was looking at a study and it said that 26%, so they took two groups of people. One group did yoga online and one group of people did yoga in person. And the online group had a 26% reduction in anxiety, and the in-person group had 23. And I was thinking, wait a second, was this the same teacher? Did they do the same yoga? Like, the study would say doing online yoga reduces your anxiety more, but like you said, it's not that simple.
It's not that simple. It's never that simple.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, in that study, were they looking particularly at the effects of yoga on anxiety? Was that the goal? And
no, it was fertility. It was a fertility study. And then they measured it by the reduction of anxiety.
Okay. Which can be a deterrent to fertility,
right.
I guess.
Yes, I can definitely send you the study. But in that,
was it by Jen Puberty by any chance?
I can't remember who did it, but I will send it to you. And another one, I was telling my students the other night, they were in yoga class, we were talking about incontinence, and there was a study done where incontinence was decreased by 70% by yoga. In the control group, it was really small, like 13% or something like that. And again, I was thinking in my mind, I have so many more questions. Like, what kind of yoga did they do? What defined that yoga? Yeah.
Exactly. So that's the perfect example of you read a study and it leads to more questions.
Yes.
So in that study, did they talk about the style of yoga? They didn't go into that at all from what you saw?
No, and from what I saw was probably a summary that a physiotherapist had shared with me. So
got it. Yeah. No, I'd love to see that too and read the whole thing, because
I can get it for you. Yeah.
It's interesting. Some of the studies that I read, they'll share the results like that, but then not go into what you just asked, not say what kind of yoga they were looking at, what poses did they do, how long did they hold them? Was there also meditation in the class? Were there breathing practices? Those are really important factors to know in a study.
Yeah.
So that goes into the quality issue with some research that I see about yoga, that there often is not, it's not conducted in the most methodical way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So what are some of the things that you're seeing now and you think, wow, that really informs the way I teach because of this study?
Yeah. One study was, it's actually a couple. One was on headstands and a couple others were on osteoporosis. So because of these, I don't teach headstands or shoulder stands in group classes, just categorically won't do it, because I don't know the history and conditions of people coming in and out of my classes at the studio where I teach. And I don't want to risk anything. It's just not worth it. However, when I'm working individually with people and I have time to ask them and get to know them, and if it's something they want to do, then I will absolutely progress them towards headstand or shoulder stand. I'm also less fearful in my own practice of coming into headstands and shoulder stands, just because I have some data and some knowledge of some research done. It's just helpful, puts my mind at ease. That's one
interesting.
Example.
I like that you said that you're not teaching in group classes, and yet on the flip side of that it makes you feel safer in your own home practice. That's amazing.
Yes. Yeah. Another big thing that I used to be really compulsive about is alignment. I think because I started being compulsive about alignment because one of my early practices that I still love, is Iyengar. I just have a different appreciation for it now. And in the training, most of the trainings that I have done, there was such a focus on alignment as guaranteeing safety.
Right.
In a pose.
Yeah.
And we know that that's not entirely accurate. Now, does that mean that I will put someone in a headstand on their forehead? No. Does that mean that in a group class, if I see people in Warrior 2 and their knee is going in a little bit medially, do I correct it? Not all the time. I don't. I remember in one of my trainings talking about looking for fires to put out in the room.
Right.
You know, if you see someone doing something, that looks potentially dangerous, you put that fire out. And I don't think that way anymore. I'm much more relaxed about it. And I actually try to create an environment where people feel safe in their bodies, because what happens is if you're putting out fires and focused on, quote, safe alignment, it makes people feel rigid within their movement and like, oh, I shouldn't flex or round my back, because that's bad for my lumbar back, or, it's not good to put my head back and look up at the ceiling because then I'm compressing the joints of my cervical spine. I don't want to create that kind of fear of movement in people. So I'm much less worried about alignment. That's a big thing. You want me to go on?
Yeah, sure.
Another one has been the value of incorporating strength work into the yoga room, especially because early in my practice, like everybody else, I idealized the flexibility component and was kind of aiming for more and more flexibility, more and more range, so that I could do this pose, so that I could feel more yogic. And I don't see it that way anymore. In fact, the opposite, my body has never felt as good as combining strength work into my mobility practice. And the research shows that incorporating strength work, certain kinds of strength work, it can help people with pain relief, joint stability, and just a safer flexibility, a more stable environment for the body rather than just more and more flexibility. And along that thinking, that's helped me work with hypermobile people, having a framework for how to, create more stability within their joints so that they're not flopping into poses and creating instability in their body and more pain.
Yeah. I just remember long ago, I went to a yoga teacher training. I had an injury. It was during my 500 hour. I could barely move. I had to stay in child's pose the whole training. And I went to a body worker and he just said, "You're doing way too much yoga."
Interesting.
And I didn't really understand then how much I was tipping the scales into mobility, flexibility. That's all I was focused on instead of the strengthening practice. So it took years to learn that the hard way. And I'm curious now, what inspires you? Where do you kind of get that for your own practice or the students that you're working with? How do you play around with strengthening? Do you find it within traditional yoga poses or do you add other elements in?
Both. In a traditional yoga pose, I'll play with engaging muscles isometrically a little bit more intensely. That's one way, because isometric muscle contraction is a way to develop strength. It's one of the early stages of strength in terms of progressing towards heavier loads. I will think of creative ways to engage muscles eccentrically. So especially for hamstrings, that's a big one that has helped my body so even in, let's say, like Upavishta Konasana, the wide leg pose, sitting on the floor, instead of just flopping forward and relaxing the legs, pressing the whole leg down into the floor, especially at the heel, so that you can feel or potentially feel the muscles on the back of the leg contract a little bit while you are in the pose. That's one way. Or sliding the heels on a blanket.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're supine, if you're lying on your back and you have a blanket on a slippery, slidey floor, you could place your feet on the blanket and extend the legs slowly. There's your eccentric load, and then drag the heels back in. There's your concentric load. So there's that is a way. And that one I actually learned from before I even started learning research. I think that was something I learned from one of my anatomy teachers, Jason Brown. So I still use that. And then I'll bring in, I do strength training myself, so I'll bring in things like a Turkish get-up into a class, which I love.
What is that? A Turkish what?
It's called a Turkish get-up, and it's done traditionally with a kettlebell, but I'll use a yoga block on the fist instead.
Uh-huh.
And that's a great way for developing some core strength in the forget the oblique muscles. Can remember the name for a minute. And I'll use resistance stretchy bands. And then my dream is one day that I want to have a room where I'm working with people, not on yoga mats, but on just a padded floor, almost like in a dojo. And we can just move around freely without staying confined on these vertical, linear spaces.
Yeah.
And then sometimes we pick up some weights, and sometimes we're hanging from bars, and that to me is where I would like it to go. But I haven't yet brought a dumbbell to my yoga classes. I don't have enough,
right,
or a place to put them if I wanted to at the yoga studio. So. Did that answer?
Yeah, that's great. I love how you said you're bringing in the strengthening and you're kind of letting go of the fear language or the alignment worries.
Mm-hmm.
Those are two really amazing points.
I just want to say that alignment does become, hold on, take a sip of water, sorry. It's not that anything goes. The rule is that the more load, the heavier load you're placing on a joint, then you care more about alignment. That's when alignment will matter for the most part. Even then, there are some instances that it's okay, like if the person is training for other kinds of alignment. But so traditional headstand, that's a time when I will, when I'm working one-on-one with people, I will aim for a more vertical alignment in the joints. Because it's a lot of weight on the neck and on the head. Mm-hmm. So, handstand also, just trying to have more, a stacking of the joints. I think not necessarily for safety, just for a more efficient handstand actually. But so that's my rule. That is a standard rule of thumb, that the heavier the load, the more alignment should be implemented.
Right.
Can be implemented.
Yeah.
But when you're working with your body weight, it's not as crucial. So just an example of that And this is something I remember my anatomy teacher talking about. Again, we talk about the knee over the ankle in warrior poses, and it can't go in front. And even in a squat, that you don't want the knee to go past the toes. And if that was the case, then the act of going up and down stairs would be highly problematic for people.
I know.
And
a yoga teacher said this to me, and then I was watching myself going up and down stairs like, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was something that Jason Brown said in a class that it stuck with me. It's true. And then, but the thing is, the body, the knee can go in front of the toes, and that's a sign of good dorsiflexion. And so I'm trying to get my knees past my toes in certain squats right now. I'm not trying to keep it totally above the ankle, because I need more ankle mobility. So, yeah. So that's an example where it's not as important to me.
Do you find it ever challenging when the research that you're doing conflicts with what you've learned in a yoga teacher training or what you're hearing in the yoga world? What is that like? Yeah.
Breath is one. That's a big one. Especially because even as early as a few years ago, I was reading a lot about breathing dysfunction. No one knows how to breathe properly. And, we need these breathing practices and to correct our breathing. And I'm all for breathing practices, but not a particular one. The research is inconclusive about one breathing practice being the one to, help people with their anxiety, help people with their asthma. The research is inconclusive. And particularly in yoga with Ujjayi, I know a lot of teachers and students who are crazy Ujjayi because they love it, and don't want to let it go ever, because they think that is not the proper way to breathe, but a way that is benefiting their bodies. And there's a study that Jules Mitchell reviewed about that it's not necessarily the case. And some people, it creates more anxiety. So Ujjayi is not the panacea that we are sometimes taught it is.
Yeah. And I've heard from some in the pelvic health world, some will say that closing off the throat also closes down our pelvic diaphragm. So it tightens it as well. And for some people, they need the opposite. So it is fascinating to me.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel like that was one, I had to kind of look at breathing in a whole new way after I left yoga teacher training. Learned some more just in terms of pelvic health, and then a few other not necessarily yoga trainings. And then it kind of flipped. I was like, okay, no belly breathing. Okay, some belly breathing. Okay, whoa. And really now it's just what I mostly work one-on-one with people. What does this individual, what could help them? And it's like you said, it's not like this is the breath for anxiety. You learn with that person. How is this breath? Yeah. You learn by asking more questions.
Yeah.
Not having the answers.
We don't know. You say, try this one. How does it make you feel? Okay. Let's try this over time. Are you still getting the same benefits? No? Okay. Let's try this one. So I'm not so much concerned with the technique and perfecting the technique. It's just what you said. It's the experience of the client and testing it out. That's really the only way you're going to know. Test it out. Because we don't know. We don't know.
Is there anything you feel like you wish was included in yoga teacher training after looking at different research?
Yeah, I think it's important not to overwhelm teachers. So I would never suggest that in a yoga teacher's first training that they need to start reading research and learn the language and apply it to their teaching. No, but in a 200-hour training, I would at least hope that they could be told, hey, there's a whole bunch of research that's been done. And we talk about the benefits of yoga, the health benefits, and some of the research tests out those theories and those hypotheses. And if you're ever interested, here's where you can find it, and here's where you can learn more about it. But it's out there for you. I think teacher trainings do. They might introduce some scientific disciplines like anatomy, some biomechanics. I think biomechanics is misunderstood for the most part in teacher trainings, but there is some of that. And that's great to have those scientific perspectives. But then research, I feel, is a way for teachers to stay more current. And no one wants to sound outdated, with how they're working with people. So, yeah.
I like how you brought forward, not to overwhelm new yoga teachers.
That's important.
It is. There's no way, when you're just getting the basics, here's a yoga pose, here's a Sanskrit name for it, here are some of the benefits, here are some of the cues. That's a lot already.
Mm-hmm. Or even I would actually rephrase, here are some of the potential benefits that have been, this is what we've been thinking. Oh no, for sure. If that could just be qualified a little bit, that would be cool.
This is so key right now. I don't know what happened, but I wrote a manual, and in 2 or 3 years span of time, I reread what I had copied down from different yoga books. And, I looked at the benefits this pose will help your kidneys. And I was thinking, I don't know that. Well, I cannot print that now. But 3 years ago, I thought, well, someone else said it. Another yoga expert said it. So now I can say it, but I don't. I took all of those out. I don't know what it's doing to the organs.
Yeah, exactly. It's important for us to question what we've been taught in that way. And that doesn't mean that we have to discredit our teachers and say that they're full of it. It just means re-examine, ask the questions. Mm-hmm. Always ask the questions.
One way I sometimes get around that is I will say some yogis believe that this affects this.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah. Some believe that. Yeah. One other thought came into mind about this, the importance of this, or potential usefulness of this for teachers, of research, is that if teachers want to be able to focus on the therapeutic value of yoga, going back to alternative health care with their clients, chances are that they'll have to work with physical therapists, just collaborate in some way, or other kinds of health practitioners, and having familiarity with research and having some knowledge of terminology, even of anatomy and biomechanics, helps you collaborate all the more. And it ultimately benefits the people that you're working with. So it can be a great tool for that.
Is there a way that you would suggest, often I will say to yoga teachers, take something in little tiny drips at a time if you can?
That's really good.
Is there a resource? I mean, obviously your membership site is one great resource that takes something, breaks it down. Is there anything else that you can think of?
That would help them get little pieces of the of this kind of information.
Without being overwhelmed, because I think what yoga teachers tend to do is dive into another teacher training. And it's all of the information all at once. You'll only take in little parts of that. But instead, if they can take in something like every week, okay. I mean, your podcast is another great example.
Yeah. Listening to podcasts and my podcast, we will be delving more into research, but we have about maybe 10 or so episodes that talk about research. They don't have to be. So the way our site is structured is that we always have the link to the original study, not the full study, because sometimes it's not free. The original published study. So people can read, if they don't want to pay the membership, they can go to that link of the original study and try to read it on their own. Reading the whole study can be intimidating, but if they choose the introduction or the conclusion to read, so it's just one small piece of that study, and usually that those parts of the study are free in an abstract. But that might be a way to just kind of lightly dip their toes into it. Read the introduction or the conclusion in an abstract. And they can do a search on PubMed.
Right.
PubMed.com. And again, you can easily get overwhelmed. Choose one study.
Right.
Choose one study, read the introduction or the conclusion, and close the page. Because it can be a rabbit hole. So they can find those abstracts on our site, and that's, again, free of charge. You just don't get our summary. And then they can search on PubMed and dip their toes in that.
That's a great thing. A great little offering. I think also something to be mindful of is that, as you said before, all of the research is not equal. And so, and a lot of the time you'll find conflicting research.
Most of the time.
Yeah.
Just to keep you on your toes. Yeah. A lot of times you'll find studies that conflict each other. And so then, okay, so you take the big picture. Oh, isn't that interesting? Because we're not going to get a black or white answer from this body of research. Decide for yourself. It's still evidence informed. You're still using research to inform your decision-making process. And that's awesome. It's totally reliable.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Oh, that's good.
You don't have to be overwhelmed with, oh, well, gosh, if this research conflicts, then, I'm just throwing the whole thing out. No, take a moment and be like, okay, what makes the most sense to me given this information?
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think a big part of that is experiencing it, going and playing with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Another thing that comes up with yoga research is bias. So, finding funding for yoga research can be challenging. So sometimes if corporations are involved with funding, that becomes problematic because, how are they influencing the study? But then at the same time, if you only have yoga professionals, yoga teachers who are conducting the research free of those corporate influences, then you risk a bias there, because what tends to happen is those people already believe in the benefits of what they're doing staunchly, emotionally.
Yeah.
And subconsciously or consciously will reject, neglect results that don't confirm what they believe, and will only focus on results that confirm their belief. So that's something that does happen in yoga research that I see. And so that's problematic too. And it's good to be aware that that can happen.
Yeah. I always tell my kids, don't believe everything you read.
Exactly.
Especially on the
sure.
internet.
Especially on the internet.
But it's books and everywhere. I mean, I think it's really important, as you said, to discern and see, okay, does this make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And to question.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this. I think this is fantastic. I'll definitely put a link in our show notes to your membership site and to that discount for our listeners. And is there any other things that we have your one website. Is there anything else, ways that people can get in touch with you?
I'm on Facebook. They can find us on the yoga. It's Yoga Research and Beyond on Facebook or Instagram. I'm also, if they want to find me directly, you can find me at Ariana Yoga on Instagram or on my website, arianayoga.com.
Excellent.
Is that too much?
No, that's perfect. That's great. Okay. Thank you so much for your time today, Ariana.
Thank you. It was really a pleasure to talk to you. I liked your questions. It was fun.
Thank you so much again, Ariana, for today's interview. I know that I am looking at research papers a little bit more, and I am just glad for your website and your podcast to break that down a little bit and to simplify it. Connected Yoga Teachers, I would love to hear more from you on this. Ariana's in our Connected Yoga Teacher Facebook group if you want to tag her in there. And I would love to continue this conversation. Is there a study that you have found to be really helpful? Is there a question that you have about anything related to the body or the mind? And maybe we can even see if there is an existing study. Ariana might know about it if there is. Also, have you left a review yet? I read all of them, often here on the podcast, like this one from Prema. So Prema wrote, "Love this group, all the podcasts and online courses. Really looking forward to my one-on-one chat with Shannon. I'm working on defining my niche and now would like to branch into the world of online courses as it seems I'm constantly traveling between Australia and the UK and would like to keep consistency with clients. This is my portal. Light blessings, Prema." So Prema, I want to know how it's going with your online course offerings and how that work is coming along since we chatted. I'm excited to see what you're going to share. Listeners, if you're not already a member of our Connected Yoga Teacher group, come and join us. We now have over 3,000 supportive yoga teachers in there, and the main goal of our group is to offer a space where we can feel like we can ask questions and share information and inspiration in a supportive and professional collective group. To join that group, you can go to the connectedyogateacher.com. It's right there on the homepage, our button, or you can look in the show notes. Thank you so much, Connected Yoga Teacher team, Laura, Samantha, and Susan. Also, thanks to Schedulicity for your sponsorship and your awesome customer service. I actually haven't had questions or tech issues lately, so I might just have to pop on and start a chat for no reason. Just kidding. Well, maybe, sort of. Have a great week, Connected Yoga Teachers. Stay connected to self, to your practice, and to your community so that you can share the yoga that lights you up.